Tēnā koutou katoa, ngā mihi nui kia koutou. Ko Karen taku ingoa, and I'm based at Otago University Aotearoa, and I've recently published research with young activists, including climate activists from Generation Zero, in the book Fierce Hope, and I've got some copies to give away at the end. And young people are angered, I think you're acknowledging that, Lisa, too, by the government's lack of long-term action on climate change and this constant deferral of policies aimed at reducing our carbon emissions. And as we head towards the general election, I think climate change needs urgent and radical attention. And it's not just a problem of agreeing on collective action, it's also too easily pushed onto the political back burner because the time horizon for the potential effects, just working out the sound system, the potential effects of inaction, the bleakest events are likely to happen beyond the lifetime of the current political leaders and the electoral cycles that they respond to. Although Cyclone Gabrielle gave us a powerful shot in the arm in terms of what those bleak events will look like. So in 2017, when we applied for Marsden funding to work with youth-led activist groups, the climate crisis was clearly evident, and in 2018 we invited 6 activist groups, and they include Protect Ihu Mātau, who were fighting for the return of land that had been confiscated in 1863, that had been designated as a special housing area for high-cost housing development. Just Speak, who aims to reduce incarceration, and Action Station, I'm sure you've heard of some of these groups. It's a people-powered online petition platform, and they address a whole range of social and economic issues. Inside Out, who are looking at rainbow rights and safety in schools and visibility. And Thursdays in Black, we worked with the Auckland group there, and they're working towards a future without sexual violence. And Generation Zero, we worked with the Auckland group, but I've had lots of interactions with Lisa over the time of doing that work. And delighted to be co-presenting with you. So a total of 90 participants took part, and it sounds like they were really diverse issues, but they all care about climate change, and in fact see how all the issues are intersectional in terms of colonisation, climate change, and gender and economic injustices. So even if they belong to a group where they prioritised one particular issue. So Generation Zero made an important contribution in terms of the Zero Carbon Act, and I won't kind of repeat what Lisa's talked about, because in fact it's a significant achievement, even if it wasn't the ideal. But also Generation Zero in Auckland did a lot of local work, and I just wanted to highlight that because this is volunteers at the end of their day at university or work or whatever. So they were instrumental in the scorecards that you might now be familiar with that inform us and whenever there's local and central elections about the environmental credentials of candidates. They also did fantastic work in Auckland on parking days, joined forces with other people to show how car parks can be used for a whole set of recreational purposes that would entertain 283 people instead of 9 cars in a day, and a huge amount of work on cycle paths, and I won't carry on with the big list. But as we all know, with the recent IPCC report, New Zealand's been urged not to drop the climate ball, but we've seen the recent slash and burn of climate policies, and this, as though there's this creating a false dichotomy between climate change and cost of living, because in fact they are all totally connected. So the effects of this constant seesaw of one step towards visionary climate action, the passing the Zero Carbon Act, the climate commissions, pathways, outlining the pathway to the future. So this kind of one step forwards, two steps back resounded across our research results. Capturing the mood of many participants, one Generation Zero activist told us, if you look at the reality right now, not much change is happening, and I'm angered by that. So one of the things that the effects of climate change affects everything, and this is really clearly across the whole day, and that it exacerbates social issues and creates new ones. And I'm going to young people feel that no one will escape the effects of climate change, and we all have a responsibility to address it. In words of another Generation Zero Auckland member, for me it's less about a specific place or a specific me moment, because everywhere is going to suffer. Even if the West Coast is going to flood, even though you don't live there, you are responsible for it. So the Auckland flooding in January and Cyclone Gabrielle 2 weeks later demonstrated all too clearly the suffering that devastating floods can bring. And supercharges weather events, and our land use, which has been talked about today, supercharges the impact of those effects. High density urban environments where water has nowhere to go, forestry on steep hillsides cluttered with slash, and towns and agriculture on floodplains all contributed to the degree of devastation. So though we're all affected, we don't have the same resources to respond to its devastations, and this is particularly Marama Davidson, I think, has really summed that up in terms of her words about how Cyclone Gabrielle hammered low-income, coastal, Māori and rural communities, and how we need to take strong climate action to make sure those with the least resources and power are prioritised in the climate response. So this is all leading me to say that climate policy is social policy and social policy is climate policy. And one of our research questions was about what inspires and sustains young activists, and Lisa's already alerted us to the emotional work of this, which I think is really important to acknowledge. And we were particularly interested in the role of hope, and we identified how young activists were hoping critically. So they were fully aware of the obstacles in their way, and holding both, I think is the words that you used, Lisa, holding both the hope and the fear was really important in terms of acknowledging what this is taking. And I think it's really important to think about, as we've seen from images of School Strike for Climate, just the impact on across the generations. I'm not saying it's only impacting on young people, because I think we all in this room will be constantly aware of it, but just thinking in particular from my point of view, working with young people, just the kind of anxiety and fear and concern that they are feeling. So our participants definitely demonstrated their capacity for long-term vision, for transformative change, and also recognising the intersectionality of all these issues. And we want our country's leaders to take that long-term, to have that commitment to long-term vision, I think is really important. And we have to expand our time horizon to think about how we can be good ancestors to those who follow. And I'm drawing on Indigenous scholar Christine Winter's ideas in that respect. This is our opportunity to build a better world for the generations to follow. And I've just got this wish list of policy recommendations that I want to finish with. I want to reconceptualise all our policies as climate policies and vice versa, and it was really good to listen to James Shaw this morning talking about housing in exactly that way. We need to lower the voting age to 16, support teachers to teach about climate change and look after young people as they hear this grim news. Follow the Climate Commission and its pathway, and the localism that we need to keep paying attention to, because what works in one context might not work in another. So that's me. Thank you for your listening. Yep. And the message from 2040, which is we're going to use as a bookend, is created by a collaboration from Just Speak and Action Station. And I've chosen the last 2 minutes because we feel like you need an injection of hope, and that was the purpose as part of their vision-making work, to create a sense of hope and think about what someone from 2040 might say looking back. So, thank you.
Together we created an audacious plan to meet the challenges of our time, and then we made it happen. Some people ran for Parliament, while others rallied social movements to build people power for real change. And some of us got to work scaling up solutions that already exist in our communities, papakainga, community health hubs, and so much more. Over the next 10 years, we prioritised the things that matter for healthy people and a happy planet. And a big win for equality. We finally started paying care and support workers a living wage. We increased housing and income support so that everyone had a roof over their head, food on the table, and time to spend with their loved ones. Our financial stress reduced, and our mental health improved, so fewer people were swept into the justice system. And yes, we transformed the justice system too. We shifted our focus away from punishment and towards prevention, restoration, and repair. With fewer people locked away in prison, we had more resources to build our zero-carbon economy. In the 2030s, when we were struck with record-breaking droughts and floods, we were so grateful to have started acting when we did. We became a society that gave everyone what they needed while caring for each other and for the planet. We were in a better position than ever to navigate new crises without leaving anyone behind. Which brings us to today. Waitangi Day 2040. The day we got the news that Aotearoa would finally be a country without prisons, 200 years since the tiriti was signed. Sometimes it's hard to believe how far we've come. But then I just think about how hard we worked and how compassionate and patient we were along the way. And straight up, it's not hard to believe at all.